Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Tetsuya Watanabe, Vice President of Rieti. Today, this is a joint session hosted by Rieti and AREA. AREA is an economic research institute for ASEAN and East Asia, an international organization located in Jakarta, Indonesia. AREA was established by ASEAN and other members of East Asia Summit, including Japan, China, India, Republic of Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. I understand the mission of AREA is to do policy research and recommendation focusing on the regional integration and sustainable development in East Asia. Today's agenda is East Asia's digital transformation and global value chain. Today, we welcome Dr. Satoshi INOMATA, Senior Overseas Research Fellow, Institute of Developing Economies, JETRO. We also welcome Dr. Lurong CHEN, Senior Economist of AREA. And today's moderator is Mr. Yasuhiko Ota, columnist of Nikkei. Now, I'm going to turn to Ota-san for the moderation. Say some remark before starting the presentation by both experts.
Thank you, Watanabe-san. I'm Yasu Ota with Nikkei newspaper. And it started out like this. I just dropped by at the Watanabe-san's office on Friday, late Friday afternoon after work. And we chatted about the globalization and US-China conflict and digitalization in Asia and industrial competitiveness and so on. And all of a sudden we realized we are just talking about the US and China only. So we forgot about the rest of Asia and Europe. So we decided we should call up our friends from ASEAN and Europe to discuss the common challenges the world is facing. So now we have two speakers today. Let me introduce the first speaker, Dr. Satoshi INOMATA, and second one is Mr. Lurong CHEN. So INOMATA-san is economist. What is the official title? I don't know. He's based in Paris, working at the OECD as a visiting economist, I think. But he belongs to the Asia Kenkyujo, Asia Economic Research Institution. I don't know the official long name. Inomata-san will explain a little bit later. And he studied in School of London and obtained a PhD in international economics from, right, am I right, Inomata-san? And he started living in Paris from last year as like something like, it's not a vacation, right? So you were continuing your research in Paris. Okay. So anyway, so INOMATA-san is in Paris. And Dr. Lurong CHEN is based in Jakarta. And let me explain a bit about the area again. Mr. Watanabe-san briefly mentioned what AREA is. The AREA is independent organization and having more than 150, I think, the researchers, economists, and the analysts all over the countries in Asia. So, which means we can expect Asian perspective of the global world. And I know the people at AREA can share with us some valuable points that we usually do not notice. So, Inomata-san, you should start now.
Okay, thank you, Ota-san. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Satoshi INOMATA from the Institute of Developing Economies, JETRO, Japan. But today I am joining you from Paris. Okay. Now, thank you again for inviting me to this very important seminar. My role here is to present a future prospect of global value chains, or GVCs, in relation to a rise of new digital technologies under the Industry 4.0. Okay, so let's get it started. I will share my slide with you. Okay. Now the concept of Industry 4.0 was born in the High-Tech Strategy 2020, advocated by the German government in 2011. Well, of course, there is a series of historic labeling from Industry 1.0 to 3.0 prior to 4.0, as shown in this table, which seems to be defined in accordance with the key technology or power source that had driven the economies of the time. According to the keyword search of literature related to Industry 4.0, the following came up for high reference frequency. Well, basically, this set of new technologies seems to draw a boundary of what we call Industry 4.0. PricewaterhouseCoopers reports that supply chain management in the era of Industry 4.0 will move from linear to omnidirectional configurations. So what does it mean? As the word change suggests, the flow of information along supply chain has an order of sequence. A supply shock, such as the shortage of parts and materials, propagates in a forward direction from upstream to downstream, while a demand shock, such as the change in consumers' preferences, is delivered backwards from downstream to upstream. The news is transmitted along supply chains like a wave through a sequence of spot-by-spot transactions at each production unit. As a result, some delay in transmission of information is bound to occur in proportion to the length and the complexity of supply chains. Well, there is a danger that a tiny misinterpretation at one point may snowball throughout the sequence like a telephone game. Actually, I'm calling this snaky supply chain management. Now, by contrast, the production system under Industry 4.0 enjoys dramatic improvement in the traceability of supply chains, empowered by smart sensors, RFID, Bluetooth, or GPS. And I'm calling this Spidey supply chain management. Well, every data at the point of product development or fabrication or logistics or sales is collected on time. And together with other relevant metadata, such as the weather reports or transport information, or even SNS posting. And then the bunch of big data is holistically analyzed by the centralized cloud computing system for instantaneous optimization of supply chain performances, where indeed external shocks can happen at any point of supply chain. For example, unplanned changes of product design, worker strike in a factory, or stopover at our border custom, or traffic jams, natural disasters, brand reputation damages, cyber attacks. Well, in order to identify such dysfunctional segments of the system and take appropriate measures without delay, swift and extensive information sharing and coordination among the various production units is absolutely indispensable. Well, also, with the diversification of consumer preferences and increasing need for product differentiation and individual customization entailed highly responsive production arrangement, which is also enabled by new digital communication technologies. Well, in this manner, new technologies propelled transition of supply chain management from unidirectional tracking of information along a linear sequence of transactions to that of a technological ecosystem with synchronistic and omnidirectional control and on-time processing of every information available. If we look back the history of global value chain, well, in accordance with Richard Baldwin's well-known unbundling theory, we see that from the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century to the IT revolution in the 20th century, technological progress has always helped the development of GVCs. The advancement of transportation modes and information and communication technology facilitated geographical fragmentation of production processes and opened the GVC gate to developing countries. For developing countries, the entry ticket to GVC is their cheap labor force. As their wage level rose, the tickets have been passed over to even less developed economies. As such, GVC has expanded over time by embracing more and more countries in peripheries. With Industry 4.0 in progress, however, the situation is now changing dramatically. Smart sensors, big data analytics, and autonomous industry robots production processes are increasingly automated, and the economic value of simple labor by human hands has significantly declined. As a result, the opportunity costs of offshoring unskilled labor became higher, and some companies started to consider reshoring or nearshoring of their production capacities. Many developing countries obtained rich learning opportunity for industrial upgrading by participating in GVCs. Nevertheless, the validity of entry tickets, the cheap labor force, as the source of competitiveness is coming to an end. As I said, a rise of new technology under Industry 4.0 enabled a high level of supply chain integration by facilitating information sharing and on-time coordination among the parties. Accordingly, the productivity of the firms that belong to the technological ecosystem will be significantly enhanced by optimization of equipment utilization, fast pass yield, inventory management, risk control, and demand focused throughout the entire supply chain. It is then anticipated that so-called digital divide will be widened between the interior and exterior of the ecosystem. Generally speaking, full digitalization of production processes is only possible for companies with big financial profiles, since it requires a sizable investment in the relevant infrastructure, such as IoT production facilities and cybersecurity system, as well as retraining of operational staff. The issue of digital divide has been generally discussed in the context of big firms vis-a-vis small, medium-sized enterprises. However, in the GVC perspective, it is also expected to show up as an issue between advanced economies and developing countries in general, and between successful emerging economies and development laggards. Well, here I included Japan simply because it is one of the G7 countries. But in terms of digital transformation, I'm not really sure whether Japan is really an advanced country or not. And that's why I put a big question mark here. Well, there are countries like Korea, Chinese Taipei, Israel, Singapore, China, Russia, and India will probably manage to keep up with the evolution of advanced technologies. But what about others? The countries struggling to get out of the so-called middle income trap. At worst, these developing countries which fail to enter the technological ecosystem may lose their production linkages with the global economic center and regress to development laggards, because cheap labor force no longer functions as a source of competitiveness. Leader firms in advanced economies will not find it particularly appealing or beneficial to keep connection with the outsiders to the ecosystem. Adidas, a German brand for sports gears, has been using 3D printers to manufacture athletic shoes of special orders by professional athletes. Recently, the company introduced a new technology which significantly reduced their fabrication time, which was indeed a weak point of additive manufacturing, and enabled customized mass production for general consumers. And our apparel venture company, Knitrate, developed an automated knitting machine, which is dubbed as an apparel version of 3D printer. Well, this company is specialized in knit products, but nowadays there are others producing clothes of different fabrics like jackets using, again, 3D printers. Now, if it evolves to cover the production of apparel products in general, then it may cause a big reshuffle on the value chain of the apparel industry. You know, developing countries like Vietnam, Myanmar, and Bangladesh, they are still highly dependent on the factory operation of foreign affiliates, especially in shoes and apparel manufacturing industry. And if these factories are to be withdrawn from their countries, its negative impact on their economies will be just enormous. So far, I have given a rather daunting picture for the future of developing countries. Well, indeed, there is a sunny side of the story as well. E-commerce, for example, enables business matching between clients and suppliers of various locations, and created huge business opportunities for individuals and small medium-sized enterprises in the GVC peripheries. Likewise, with 3D printers, designers from every corner of the globe are able to remotely offer interactive prototyping of a new product, and thus participate in the world's frontier of product design and development. Blockchain technology got famous because of Bitcoins, but one of the most important applications of the technology is found in the area of international logistics. Blockchain enhances traceability and transparency of supply chains. Shipping and border operations will be streamlined, reducing various forms of transaction costs from physical paperwork to credibility assessment. Also, combined with modern transport system, blockchain enhances coordination efficiency of logistic operation, which renders supply chains of something like perishable commodities, like fresh fruits and vegetables, much more manageable, encouraging JVC participation of agricultural economies. as Richard Baldwin puts it in terms of third unbundling, the virtual presence technology, as already popularized today by online meetings or remote medical services, significantly broaden the range of offshoreable tasks. In the past, the tasks prone for offshoring are considered to be those which do not require complex communication, or put differently, those which are amenable to structural codification. However, the virtual presence technology enabled face-to-face communication between remote locations, which is expected to change their image of what is offshoreable. For example, the production of complicated products which require a detailed on-the-spot description of product specification, or manufacturing services which are proprietary to a particular craftsmanship of individual meisters. Well, in some day, these kind of tasks can be offshore to developing countries as easily as the simple assembly of parts and components. So to conclude, my hypothesis is that a rise of new digital technologies under Industry 4.0 will sharpen the dichotomy between winners and losers of developing countries. And my impression is that many ASEAN countries are standing on the edge. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Inomata-san. Thank you for your insightful analysis of newly formed global supply chain. And particularly, I was impressed by your PowerPoints, using the animations is wonderful. And you mentioned thank you for the introduction of some example of the individual companies, which seems to be doing well in the newly formed GBC. And also you mentioned what you should think about the offshoreable part of the supply chain. So I think many companies has to think about it. And if I will be in trouble if I am asked which I prefer, snake or spider. So probably spider's better.